Born on the Pipot Reserve in Saskatchewan, Canada, she found her musical voice in the 60s and began a career that spanned 5 decades and as many continents. She's performed on college campuses, concert halls, and before the crowned heads of Europe. She's brought both her love of music and a message of tolerance to millions of children in the 7 years she served on the cast of Sesame Street. Brought to you today by the letter A. She's traveled the world as a representative for UNESCO and the High Commission for Refugees in Europe and Asia. Her list of degrees and awards is simply too long to include in this introduction, but it does include a few things like an Oscar and a Golden Globe, and a place in Canada's Country Music Hall of Fame. She's recorded and released 18 albums, one just recently called Running from the Drum, which actually you can find it on Buffy's website. Did I mention she's also a rock star? She also founded and operates the Nihiwan Foundation for American Indian Education and is currently a board member of the Native Arts and Culture Foundation, a GIA member. Most importantly, Buffy is an artist whose work has embodied her commitment to justice and social activism. When an artist's work expresses the truth, not everyone wants to hear it. When Presidents Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon banned her music from America's airwaves, you know she must have been getting close to that truth. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Buffy Sainte-Marie.
I never saw so many business suits. Never knew a dollar sign could look so cute.
Thank you. Kichimigwich. I thank the Creator for this day when good people with good hearts and minds come together to support creativity, the creation, the creative arts. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to the MacArthur Foundation and the Joyce Foundation, all the volunteers and the committee and staff members who've made this conference possible. My own Nihiwan Foundation, we've put on conferences like this, and I know how much work it takes and how valuable it is both to the attendees and those of us who have the honor to invite you into our worlds. Some will tell you what you really want ain't on the menu. Don't believe them. Don't believe them. Cook it up yourself and then prepare to serve them. Our foundations, we serve them. There's a lot of things I could talk to you about today. We don't have a whole lot of time. I'm going to kind of breeze through it, but my own foundation, I started in 1968. When I was in my 20s, I was a young singer with too much money. And I've lived a life, well, from the time that I was 3, really at the intersection of the arts and social justice. My role at the time that you probably first heard about me in the 1960s, I considered my role not to be out there with Judy and Joni and those guys at the photo ops of social change involving civil rights and anti-war movement, because there were thousands of people there. So my role I've always considered to be, well, a little bit less visible, but I always wanted to cover the bases that nobody else was covering. And for me, that was Indian country. There was nobody helping us in those days. And some of us got into an awful lot of trouble, you know. If you're a star with a big management protection around you, you can get away with a little bit more truth than if you're one little Indian in the middle of nowhere. Our stories seldom got told in the local paper, and therefore they never made it to the news wires. And a lot of you wonder, what happened to the American Indian movement? Where did Buffy go? You know, a lot of people figure that we either retired or we died, or, you know, we just gave it up somehow. But many of my peers who were working in those times in music and in grassroots jobs are still around, still doing good work, but you just don't hear about us that much. So my job was to fill in the blanks. In the 1960s, I said I was a young singer with too much money. And what I did with that money, with my showbiz money, my concert money, I bought airplane tickets. That's what it really got me. That has been my reward from all those hours in show business. It hasn't been the fame, it hasn't been the clothes, but, well, maybe a little bit. I'm on the road these days with a rock and roll band. I'm on the road about 200 days a year. And, you know, when I was getting dressed this morning, I said, gee, I just don't have anything that I would wear to council and foundations. And I did. So here, what you see is what you're getting today. But in the 60s, the beauty of my lifestyle really developed within me. And if I had a concert in New York, then I'd be up at the Mohawk Reservation, you know, the next day. If I had a concert in Sydney, Australia, I'd be out in the bush with Aboriginal people the next day. The same thing in Scandinavia. I was doing concerts in Stockholm and Oslo and Copenhagen, and then I'd be up at the top of the world in the Arctic with the Sami people, the indigenous people there. So I've had a lifetime of back and forth between the big fancy concert stages of the world, meeting people who wanted to know. They wanted to know about the corners of the world that are lesser known. And in my alternative days off, I'd be out being educated at a grassroots level. And it's enriched me and pleasured me and given me a love and a respect for both sides. And as grant makers, that's what we can do. You know, in a way, we get to see things in the grassroots that our colleagues who have to stay in the office don't get to see, and vice versa. So what I discovered in Indian country was that there were many, many scholarships going wanting, that people who wanted those scholarships, they just did not know how to negotiate the road between where they were at and how to get a scholarship and go to college. So I started my little last-ditch scholarship foundation, the Nihiwan Foundation, with a little built-in clause that you had to show me that you had done some research, that you had already been turned down from 2 other foundations. And that way we got you know, it was kind of a scam, it was kind of a trick to get people to go and investigate the scholarships that otherwise were going wanted. So I think in my whole career, yeah, I do have an Academy Award Oscar, and that was hot. I got to wear that nice pink dress to the Oscars. But basically, I think the thing that has pleased me even more than any kind of show business accolades was to learn about, maybe 15, 20 years ago, that 2 of my grant recipients from the 60s had gone on to preside over tribal colleges, the American Indian Tribal College Group. And one of them went on to be a founder and president of AHEC, the American Indian Higher Education Consortium, Lionel Bordeaux. And I never knew, you know, but as a fellow grant maker, it's such an incredible thrill to know that you can do some little thing for someone who will just take it to the moon, you know, just take it to areas which you never, ever could have imagined. Now, I've been an artist a conscious artist, since I was about 3, when I first saw a piano and walked over to it and realized that what it did and that I could play it, and it became my toy. I wasn't a Barbie's kind of kid, and I never played sports. What I played was art. And what I'm trying to tell you, you know, the shortcut is that I believe that everybody's an artist, and so many of our kids get talked out of it. I mean, in first grade, they're put on the corporate road to go and become, you know, go and have to stand in somebody's line and work for their corporation. And where does their artistry go? Consider any little kid, consider yourself, any little group of 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, you take them to the beach, they're playing in the sand, they make pictures, they dance, they make up songs, they use their imaginations, they make drama. Art is inborn. Art is something that's natural. Creativity is our gift from the Creator. If we're made in the image of the Creator, that's our green light for creativity. And every single person has that within ourselves. So that's kind of what has motivated me, what has sustained me, and what I reach out to in people in my life today.